My name is Irving David Allen. I'm a community organizer and project manager and Greensboro native. Auntie's been in my family for a long time, so it's always been in my ear since I was in preschool. I with the child development lab here, so I've always been an Aggie, and my granddad was really big on Auntie. He encouraged my sisters. They went to Ivy League school, but he would always tell them, what's wrong with Auntie? You'll be right up the road. So I think that played a lot into both me and my brother's decision. I think all three of my brothers went to Auntie.
Oh, really? Do you believe that people who cover stories of communities that they're unfamiliar with should seek a different perspective?
Yeah, I think when you're reporting, you should always seek a different perspective because we all have experiences that shape our view of the world. But I think A&T is often overlooked for the important roles that it plays, like not only in the black community, but just in Greensboro as a whole. Like nothing brings more attention and more positive light to Greensboro than A&T State University. So it's a little confusing because a lot of people, look at this as the bad side of town. They look down on what A&T has to offer, but nothing that I can think of offers more than this university to like the city and the state as a whole. When I travel across the country, like that's what people want to talk about. It's like, oh, I hear about A&T, I've heard about homecoming, I've heard about the engineering program, I've heard about the band. Like that's the first thing that always people say when I say I'm from Greensboro.
Really? Let's see. How is your work in the community giving you a different perspective of the media?
Well, I've been able to work firsthand with some other Dudley alums who are really big in movement work. Reverend Nelson Johnson, he went to A&T. Dr. Claude Barnes, he taught here. Also changed the course of history, and I think those students banded together. Both A&T and Dudley High School students came together to change the course of history as we know it, and I think it doesn't get enough recognition, and a lot of those folks are still alive, still walking around the city that you can talk to and get their stories from, and I think it's a shame that we don't have as much ownership over the history that we've created, especially on this campus.
Do you think that all of those overlooked stories and all those times when those people's stories those opportunities could have been provided for them to tell their stories have somewhat impact on the way that people still look at this side of town and still look at A&T?
Absolutely. I think the way the story is told is how you're remembered, and I think the more narrow the story, then I think you lose the richness and the totality of what played a part in creating that. And I think that a lot of people in high places have interests in not having that recreated, and so you only get the end result as opposed to the process and how you got there, because they don't want it to happen again. And so we can highlight and uplift certain heroes to the point where it seems like they're superheroes, and they made these things happen, and we have to wait for some sort of special type of person to make these things happen, when in actuality it was a community of people learning together and driving together and striving for goals. And I think that those are the things that we miss when we don't tell the story the right way.
I think that local media outlets in Greensboro have covered A&T in a two-dimensional way, or like you said, not in a right way.
Yeah,
in the past.
I think it's a lot missing. It's a lot to the story, and I think it's taken courageous students to even fight over the history.
First, I want you to talk about and explain Ignite North Carolina, and then your position as the regional director.
So Ignite NC is an organization that I was very proud to be a part of. I was there almost at the beginning of the organization, and we started. It started in 2012. I came on in early 2013, and it's totally about investing in young folks and creating points of entry for folks to do movement work. We ran a fellowship program that expanded throughout North Carolina to as many as 11 to 12 campuses across the state. The organization started a fellowship specifically to create entry points for folks to get into the work and for folks to learn while they're actually doing. So I think we put a lot of onus on like getting folks trained up and like building these special people. But I think that in organizing, it's something that we do every day in different capacities, whether we're, planning a trip to out somewhere with our friends or something like that. So it doesn't take a whole lot of knowledge, and really all you're doing is building your local network and trying to influence them. And so we tried to build a program that accentuated that and created access for college students across the campus. It's still the fastest growing organization in the state, like 5 years later now.
Oh, wow.
Which is really incredible. But we had an opportunity to work with so many people and influence so many people and introduce them to movement work and to grow their I guess analysis and their skill sets. So folks like the SGA president here, Delaney Vandergrift, she was a fellow. Vashti Hinton graduated last year, 2 years ago, but she came through the program, and it's really just been something where we've been able to learn and grow from the people in the program just as much as they've been able to learn from the program. So it's something that I was really excited to be a part about.
Can you explain a little bit more about those transformations as far as like student activism work, specifically in Greensboro, and what do you think the future holds for Ignite NC in Greensboro?
Yeah, so we've pushed a lot of campaigns that focused around the Board of Governors and student education here in North Carolina, because it's a national problem here in the country with student debt rising, and it mainly affects like Black and brown folks who are just really striving to make it and often come from the most marginalized places. So we ran campaigns to really shed a light and to bring education to the campuses that we were on, because we had access to a lot of students, and that led to like changes in the Board of Governors laws that they were pushing to do. I think they were looking to pass a bill a couple years ago that would have essentially gotten rid of the majority of like HBCUs here in the state. With the legislation they were passing, we were able to get that reversed, and ran a lot of campaigns against like the Silent Sam statue that was taken down. Like those were some fellows of ours. So just been able to inspire and play off of the energy that students bring and the concerns that they have for the experiences that they have, because they don't often get the attention of policy or societal concerns that they have going on, because they don't have that solidified power, because they're I guess a transient population. They move around a lot. Students are settling, making their lives, going to school and different things. So I think it's just important to like highlight those things, and then you're doubly so because we work with like students of color who are affected in a lot of different ways. And so we got our inspiration and our ideas from just what students were going through on a daily basis and built campaigns, and they got skills from being able to do that work, and also benefited from winning the campaign.
It's a common like misconception you hear a lot about like A&T as far as like you're being like a native of Greensboro, going through your daily life, and what's like a common misconception you hear from like people that you see?
Well, I think for me it's just that like when I talk about like the positive things, when people see the accolades and the awards that come out, they're surprised. I think that's the main thing. And A&T has been doing this for like since it's been here. But stigma has got a lot to do with like the location of the school and the population of the school, that I think if I had the answer about how to get around it, then we would have did it a long time ago. But I think it's hard to focus on one thing. But I think the news coverage of like connecting anything that goes on to like in the media or crime to like students or victims that attended the campus, even like I've seen stories that just like the school had no correlation with anything that happened, but to served as a point of reference for like the whole story.
Or a point of location.
Yeah, and
Yeah,
it's
somewhere
like
to like tie it to.
it doesn't make sense like for it to be written like that. They don't do it with Guilford College. They don't do it with other prominent places. But
How do you think that, as a Greensboro native, you can help change those perceptions?
well, I think just being a part of the proud tradition of A&T in its own way serves as that. So a lot of like I said, everywhere I go, there's always an Aggie, there's always alumni, and there's always greatness around.
The Aggie pride is strong.
It's really strong, and so I think serving in that tradition and but also like pushing the school, the administration to play their part and to bear the grunt of some of the things that they have planned to carry on the tradition, because I think that it's important for students to be able to hold that responsibility, but ultimately the university has to play that part as well. And I think there are some concerns that the community has about the way the campus is growing and developing in East Greensboro that I think could serve to have some community conversation. Well, I mean, I'll put it like this: when I stopped attending A&T, I lived with my brother in a apartment building that's now the I don't know what it's called. I guess Sebastian Place. What are those new apartment buildings? But it's always been a historic community, and a lot like the conversation that UNCG has been having when it's been expanded into the Glenwood community over there. I think that there's a similar conversation that needs to be had about the community here. But I think that the Glenwood community actually has more political power than community here, and so it'd be even more difficult for the voices over here to be heard against like development. This is great. I'm glad you reached out. Happy that I could be a part. Hopefully I was able to shed some light and give some pertinent information. And if you need anything else, definitely give me a call, and I can however I can be helpful.
Thank you very much.